You are live.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. This is the Joint Legislative Management Committee meeting on March 14th. Welcome, everyone. We have two agenda items today. First is staff introductions. We have a new staff member in our Human Resources Department, and we just wanted to make sure everyone had a chance to meet Maggie. Go ahead. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Maggie Farron. I'm the new in-house employment counsel in the Office of Legislative Human Resources. I worked most recently in labor and employee relations at UVM. I'm excited to join the team.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Right.
Welcome.
All right. Any questions for Maggie before we jump into our big agenda item? Okay. All right. So the purpose for us coming together this morning is to review the legislative staff policy on proposed overtime pay and comp time off. This has been a project in the works for a long time, and wanted to bring on Jen Carvey and Arlene and whoever else wants to be part of this conversation to do the walkthrough, give some background on what prompted this and the policy. So, great.
I can probably jump up. Is it easier?
Yeah, why don't we
over here?
Yeah, and then Jen, are you okay on the table?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, so it might be easiest if I over here. Please share it. Okay. Good morning, Arlene Donovan from Legislative Human Resources. Good to see you all. So I think it might be easiest if I give you a high-level background of how we ended up here, and then we do have a policy for your consideration this morning that is applicable to this background information that Jen will walk you through. And of course, you have questions, we're happy to answer them.
So this is operationalizing the language we put in the BAA.
This is the other piece of, right, exactly. This is why the language was in the BAA.
Yeah. So quite a while ago, about a year ago or so, it was brought to the attention of Human Resources that we may want to go and look at how some of the staff were categorized, meaning whether or not they should be exempt or non-exempt as far as overtime is concerned. And so when we started looking at that, we did discover that some of the staff were miscategorized as exempt, and they in turn should have been categorized according to Vermont laws as non-exempt, meaning they should have been earning cash overtime at time and a half. So understanding that this is something that legally had to be corrected, we did take steps to correct it for the interim. We worked with outside counsel. We reviewed every job description for all of the staff and identified about 20 people that were miscategorized.
Can I just pause one? Jen Carvey, Legislative Counsel, just to say, we have been treating everyone at 1 hour of comp time off for 1 hour of overtime worked. And so what Arlene is talking about is 1.5 times cash for every 1 hour worked, as opposed to the 1 for 1 comp.
Mm-hmm.
So that's,
Yep.
I didn't know if they were familiar with what.
That's a great point. And so we made a change temporarily until we could figure out how to move everybody back to historically what we've always been doing. So we did what was called a 2-year look back. We looked at all of the overtime that people may have not been compensated for those 20 people, and we paid them for any lost compensatory time. And they in turn had to be changed in the system to earn time and a half cash overtime. And that's where they stand today. And when we made that change, it quickly became evident to us that it was causing inequities that we had not had before in some of our offices, because historically everybody had been treated the same. That's what we've been striving for since the HR department has been created. We have all of these policies in place that Joint Legislative Management Committee has approved. And now we created this imbalance, which we had to create in order to be legally compliant. And as a result of that, the AA language had to be changed so that we could put everyone back to the equitable practices that we had really been following all along. And so as a group, we created a policy for the staff to really just to outline what we've always been doing with some very minor changes. And that's where we are today. So we have a policy for your consideration this morning that outlines how the staff, how we would desire that the staff be compensated for their overtime for every hour that they work over 40 hours. There's 4 categories or definitions of the staff, because depending on how they are defined, will determine how they accrue and are paid their overtime. And so that's sort of the very high level of how we got here today.
And I will add that it was, I think, several meetings of the staff directors trying to talk through what the options were and what the best path forward was. The proposal in front of you from the staff directors is not necessary, doesn't make everybody in the branch happy. But we're striving for, so, I mean, just to be transparent, you may hear from some people who are not, but I think as staff directors, our thought is that treating everyone equally, treating everyone the same to the extent we can, feels like the most fair and what we've been looking for, as Arlene said, and striving to have consistency. That's part of the reason HR was brought on, is to try not to have different policies among different offices or for different categories of employees.
What was the nature of the dissatisfaction? I mean, obviously this makes sense. We've acted, we gave you the language and stuff in the BAA, but was the issue around comp time versus pay, 1.5 versus 1?
It is not consistent across those who are unhappy, and that's why.
Oh,
So
okay.
there were, I think what we heard was that there were a lot of people in offices who really wanted the comp time option back. For some people, that's a big part of what attracted them to this job, is that it's, you know, it's in its own way, sort of cyclical, and people are working a lot of overtime during the session with the balance of taking off, or hopefully being able to take off time when we're out of session using that comp time. And so, so for some people, earning 1.5 cash wasn't sufficient to offset what they really wanted, which was the comp time. For others, they liked earning 1.5 cash for their overtime and did not want to lose that. And so are unhappy with the proposal to go to back to straight, although that had been our practice for a long time. So, so what the proposal here would do is in the policy is to, as Arlene said, there's different categories of employees. There's year-round exempt, who are the people who are currently receiving 1-for-1 comp time and would continue to under the policy. They're not subject to the state wage and hour laws that would otherwise require, until the BAA provision exempted branch, the 1.5 cash. So that's year-round exempt employees. So someone who's expected to be here all year, hired, you know, on an ongoing basis. And it's in a particular category that we've tied to some definitions from the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act, even though that law does not apply to state legislative employees. That's just a way of categorizing those folks. We have year-round non-exempt employees. These are the people who have been in the 1.5 cash category. And they are the ones who, again, everyone is exempt from the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act, but under the state law should have been, and have been now getting 1.5 cash. Things would change for them.
Representative Wood has a question. Go ahead.
Arlene, can you clarify for me then? It's sounding like the people who we found we were out of compliance with, and you went back and did a retroactive adjustment to, would have mostly been in this category. Is that accurate?
They're all in that category, about 20 people.
Okay, and so if we were not treating them appropriately at that time, it's because of the language in the BAA.
Right,
Okay, yeah,
exactly.
sorry, I just connected the dots,
Yep,
sorry.
so there's language in
That's
the
why they
BAA.
need, never mind, I got it.
Exactly, that carves the all
Right.
permanent employees.
We're out of compliance then, why are we out of compliance with
Right,
this? Okay, all right,
so,
because of the BAA. All right,
so
I got
as
it,
of
sorry.
yesterday, when the BAA was signed.
Yeah.
That group, all of our permanent employees are now carved out of the and treated the same under the state wage and hour laws. So that, and that's the importance of having now a policy so that they know what to expect going forward. And you can see on the top of this draft, this would be effective. The proposal is to have this effective beginning of the pay period following enactment of BAA.
That's
We
why
can,
we're
And the
here,
governor
yes.
signed it.
exactly. We didn't know what was going to happen when we were putting this together, so you can put a date certain in there.
So I do have a quick question.
Okay.
So can you tell us, or can you tell us how many employees we have in these various?
Roughly.
I can tell you roughly, yeah.
Roughly,
So
yeah.
year-round exempt employees, I would say, so I guess I should start, including our seasonal staff, we have just over ballpark, about 100 people. So our year-round exempt employees, I would say, is probably around half of those, half that staff, so about 50 or so people. Our year-round non-exempt employees, these are the people who we call were impacted by this change. These people who are now in this time and a half category is approximately around 20 people. And the remaining staff who are our seasonal or temporary staff, exempt and non-exempt, those are our committee assistants, our doorkeepers, and a handful of other folks would be the remaining staff. So the
And they're,
20 people.
those folks are non-exempt? The last group we just talked about?
The last group is the majority of them are non-exempt, and on very rare occasion, we may have an exempt person in that category.
And the seasonal and temporary ones are, seasonal and temporary non-exempt are not part of the BAA change because they are not permanent employees. So they would, so let me tell you what's in the draft here, and there's a lot more words on the pages than we need to talk to, so sometimes some of you know I tend to go through in detail. I don't think we need to go through in a lot of detail unless you want to. I'll just tell you what these are.
Yeah.
So for year-round exempt employees, so as Arlene said, about half, it's the same 1-for-1 comp time for each hour of overtime. For the year-round non-exempt, we go with the 1 hour for 1 hour, but they would get a choice of cash or comp. So we're keeping retaining some aspect of the cash option, but at a 1-for-1 cash or comp. For Capitol Police, they have been doing time and a half. It's our understanding that that's consistent with police departments across the state. And so they would retain the time and a half cash or comp, which is what they have been doing. And then the seasonal and temporary employees would receive time and a half cash only. They are not here in the off season to use comp time. So they've historically gotten cash and that would continue. So really the only group for whom there is a difference in the short term is that permanent non-exempt group who for the last few months have been receiving time and a half cash and now would have the option of cash or comp, but on a 1-for-1 basis.
Yeah. Okay.
And one thing I do want to mention that was important when the staff directors were talking is that because most offices have a combination of exempt and non-exempt, we would have people and have had people who are earning over the last few months 1 hour of benefit for overtime worked and others earning an hour and a half, time and a half for over hours worked. And that was creating some real equity issues within offices, especially when sometimes the jobs were fairly similar.
What you just stated though is not uncommon in the workplace, that there are some that earn an hour and some that earn an hour and a half. I mean, that's pretty common in the workplace. I'm just trying to understand the rationale about the police being different, if we're trying to have some equity within departments and, saying that it's sort of based upon what other police do. That same argument could be used by the year-round non-exempt employees in other places. They would get time and a half. So I guess I have a question about why the police are called out at time and a half.
Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can speak to it sort of high level, and then Janet Miller probably would be, she was also very
Yeah.
ingrained in this conversation. So Capitol Police, as I understand it, have always earned time and a half for overtime historically. And so we're really trying to stay in keeping with what we had always done historically. So that was important for them. It was also important for us, I would just say from a recruiting standpoint, to be perfectly honest. So they've always earned time and a half. We did reach out to other law enforcement agencies across the state. This is common in policing, it's my understanding. And I also feel like, and we did discuss it at length with the Sergeant at Arms, that if we changed it to straight time, we may have a very hard time recruiting police officers here. We have a few openings. And I think it also would be a dissatisfier for the officers who are here currently, where that's what they had always been earning.
I was just, we talked about equity and it's not.
We can't be totally pure, apparently.
Apparently, yes. So I just wanted to have a little bit more background itself to know that this is what had been being done. And not that I'm not saying I agree or disagree with it, but help to have that background. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think some of this is trying to also generally, these are the terms under which people had been hired. It was their expectation coming in.
Yeah, I get that.
And so that's really what some of this restoration is to restore the straight time for people who that had been hired under that expectation, and for Capitol Police, that's a different expectation.
I just wanted to add, I take Teresa's point about trying to get to a more pure equity standard, but the police, not every day, but potentially they're in the line of duty for more stress, more danger than the other folks. So it doesn't bother me in the larger scheme of things that they would get a little more.
Right, it felt to us like a different, I think also like a different kind of job. I mean, the duties of their role are significantly different from the duties of those who are working in offices.
But it does indicate a responsibility, whoever's the chief, to look at the scheduling, to look at how overtime is being used, because we know that there are times, in fact, individuals have been allowed to really accrue a lot more and schedule themselves for more. And so with that covered, I mean, that provision and that payment, it does mean we need to be kind of vigilant around how that overtime is being experienced and who's doing it. And because from past experience, not necessarily here, but in law enforcement, there have been serious concerns that have been raised.
I think I don't read the law through. I think that's basically it. The rest of the language in each of these is sort of the mechanics of how it works, the timing of the idea is to have sort of an annual election by the employee of I'm planning to do comp time, or I'm planning to do cash, for those who would have that option around the same time as the open enrollment for benefits. Just in order to have some predictability going into the session. And then if somebody needed to make a change during the session, it's not it's not calcified. They can talk to their director and talk to HR and make a change if necessary. There was a, change in life circumstances or something that made one or the other not a good fit anymore. But the idea was not to have people changing or counting some hours of overtime in a pay period as cash and others as comp, and it makes it more operationally challenging.
The only modification then we really talked about is making the effective date, which we can now determine.
Yes, we will know the beginning of the pay period.
Okay, so I would move approval of this policy. I'm sorry, okay.
But we have a motion and now we can go.
And with the understanding the effective date will be specifically.
Yeah. Got it.
I'm assuming we had a previous policy before.
We did not.
We did not.
This is the first time our overtime has been.
That's why we needed HR.
Exactly. This is some of what.
Yeah.
Orleans bringing to the table. Yeah.
So it's kind of Wild West. discussed before.
Yeah,
On an
yes,
individual basis.
yes, and there were some differences in
So how do we
application.
convey this to Sergeant at Arms? That she needs to manage her police department overtime as Senator Kitchell we just talked about.
Well, this is not a change in their practice.
Right, but it might be a change in their management. Perhaps.
Well, this may be a good time with a new sergeant at arms and a new
new
chief
chief,
coming
yeah.
in.
It might be the,
Have that.
And we'll have an opportunity to, for the future meeting.
and
Mhm.
we've had a few employees come and go. As, have we lost employees? I think that was recently, that's me. Was that part of, was this lack of this policy detrimental for people staying with us?
Not, I don't believe that this policy, especially, right, especially because for many employees, it was, right, it is not a change. But I'm not aware of any who have left as a result of this.
Because
No.
of the lack of us.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion on the table to approve the overtime pay and comp time off policy. Are there any further questions?
I just want to thank everybody who put this together. I know it was endless hours and, you know, hearing from the various little stakeholder groups. So I'm very appreciative of all that.
Thank you. No, you put a lot of time and effort into it. All right, seeing no further questions, I will call the roll. Senator Burr,
Yes.
Senator Brock,
Yes.
Senator Kashi,
Yes.
Senator Kitchell,
Yes.
Representative James,
Yes.
Representative Shaw,
Yes.
Representative Wood,
Yes.
and I am a yes, so the motion carries 8-0. Thank you very, very much, everyone. Really appreciate it. I know it's a busy time. We will be in touch about a future meeting to meet our new police chief that's coming on and some